The young woman's name was Alara, a quiet soul who had always kept to herself. She worked at a tailor's shop during the day, sewing clothes with remarkable skill, but at night she disappeared without explanation. The villagers only knew that since the death of her parents years ago, she had grown distant, her smile fading into silence. Yet what unsettled them most was her nightly journey to the cemetery, where she wandered among the gravestones as though searching for something or someone. One evening, the whispers grew louder. Children claimed they had heard her speaking to a man, though no one saw anyone with her. A few brave villagers tried to approach, but each time they did, Alara's lantern flickered strangely, and they felt a sudden chill that forced them to retreat. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said she was summoning spirits. Others believed she was protecting a hidden treasure buried with the dead. But no one dared to press further. That was when Dr. Calder, a physician newly arrived in the village, grew curious. Unlike the others, he did not believe in curses or ghosts. To him, there had to be a logical explanation. Still, he admitted one thing. Alara's nightly visits carried an air of mystery too strange to ignore. So, one moonlit night, he decided to follow her quietly. At first, all he saw was her silhouette moving slowly between the graves, lantern glowing faintly in her hand. But then, something happened that nearly made him stumble. Alara knelt before a particular coffin, her fingers tracing the name carved into the stone, and she whispered words so softly that only the night could hear. Dr. Calder leaned closer, his heart pounding. He knew he was about to uncover a secret that could change everything. Dr. Calder crouched behind an old oak tree, straining to hear her words. The night was silent, broken only by the faint murmur of Alara's voice. She wasn't chanting like someone performing a ritual. She was speaking with tenderness, almost like a wife talking to her beloved. Her lantern glowed against the coffin's stone surface, illuminating the name, Adrian Thorne. Calder frowned. The name was unfamiliar, yet Alara spoke it with deep affection, as though it meant everything to her. Adrian, they don't understand, she whispered, but I'll keep coming until you return me. Calder's pulse quickened. Return? Did she believe the dead could rise? He watched as she placed a small bundle beside the grave, a folded piece of cloth embroidered with careful stitches. It looked like a handkerchief, but with initials sewn into it. A.T. Her fingers lingered on it with such longing that Calder felt a strange mix of sorrow and unease. For several nights, he continued observing from a distance. Each time, the pattern was the same. Alara whispering, leaving small tokens, and staying until the lantern's flame nearly burned out. The villagers grew restless. They whispered in the marketplace that Alara had fallen under a dark spell, that Adrian must have been a wicked man who trapped her spirit even from beyond the grave. Fear spread so quickly that many avoided the cemetery altogether. But Calder was not satisfied with rumors. His scientific mind demanded truth, not superstition. One morning, he began asking questions. Who was Adrian Thorne? Why did Alara grieve for him so fiercely? Most shrugged, some warned him to stop prying, and others claimed Adrian had been a stranger who arrived years ago and vanished suddenly. No one knew the full story. That night, Calder made a bold decision. He would not only watch, he would approach. As Alara knelt before the grave again, whispering her heartache into the cold earth, Calder stepped out from the shadows. The lantern flickered violently, casting eerie shapes across the gravestones. Alara froze, her eyes widening in shock as she realized she was not alone. "Who are you?" she demanded, clutching the lantern as though it were a shield. Calder raised his hands gently. "Please, I mean no harm. I only wish to understand why you come here every night. Who is Adrian Thorne to you?" For a long moment, Alara stared at him, her lips trembling as though caught between silence and confession. Finally, her voice broke with a mixture of sorrow and defiance. "He was the only man I ever loved," she whispered, "and he is not truly gone." Alara's words hung in the cold night air, and for a moment Calder thought he had misheard. Not truly gone? His rational mind rejected the possibility. Yet something in her trembling voice carried a conviction too strong to dismiss. He stepped closer, careful not to startle her, though his heart beat like a drum inside his chest. "Alara," he said softly, "death is final. Adrian cannot return." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That's what they all say. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't hear his promise." Calder's curiosity sharpened. "Promise? What promise?" Alara lowered her gaze to the gravestone, brushing her fingers along the carved letters. "The night Adrian died, he swore he would come back to me. He said our love was too strong to be broken by death. And, Doctor, I believe him." Calder wanted to argue, but something in her tone silenced him. He realized that behind the mystery, this was a woman clinging desperately to love, unwilling to let grief swallow her whole. Still, the scientist in him needed answers. Over the following nights, Calder returned to the cemetery, not to confront her, but to listen. Alara began to trust him, her guarded silence slowly breaking into fragments of her story. Adrian had been a traveler, a man of charm and brilliance, who arrived in the village years ago. He spoke of distant lands, rare knowledge, and dreams larger than life itself. To Alara, who had known only hardship and solitude, he was like a light in endless darkness. Their love blossomed quickly, fiercely, and when he suddenly fell ill and died, it shattered her world. But his death was strange, Alara whispered one evening, her lantern flickering between them. One moment he was fading, the next he grasped my hand with strength I hadn't seen in weeks. His eyes burned into mine, and he said, "Wait for me, Alara. I'll return." Then he was gone. Calder frowned. An illusion of the mind, perhaps. The final words of a man slipping away. Alara shook her head firmly. "No, you don't understand. Since then, I've felt him. Sometimes in my dreams, sometimes in the wind. Once, I heard his voice calling me here. That's why I come. I know he's trying to find his way back." Calder struggled to balance reason and empathy. Part of him wanted to dismiss her belief as grief-stricken fantasy, yet another part recognized the peculiar strength of her conviction. And then there was the coffin itself. Each time Alara touched it, he noticed faint markings on the soil, like the earth had shifted, as though disturbed from within. His thoughts grew darker. Could it be possible? Not resurrection, no. But perhaps Adrian had never truly died. Could there have been some deception, a hidden truth the village had forgotten? Driven by this unsettling thought, Calder decided to dig deeper into Adrian's past. He combed through old records, spoke with villagers who remembered the stranger, and discovered fragments of a story more peculiar than he had imagined. Adrian was not just a traveler. He had been a scholar of rare medicines and ancient practices, some said even of forbidden sciences. One man recalled whispers that Adrian possessed knowledge of herbs that could slow the body to a death-like state. Another claimed he had seen Adrian experimenting with powders that made animals appear lifeless, only to stir again hours later. Calder's pulse quickened. If these accounts were true, could Adrian have staged his own death? The idea was absurd, yet the evidence gnawed at him. Perhaps Alara's nightly vigils were not in vain. Perhaps her beloved had prepared something extraordinary or dangerous. One evening, Calder returned to the cemetery determined to confront Alara with what he had learned. But when he arrived, she was already there, kneeling before Adrian's coffin. Only this time, the coffin's lid was slightly ajar. The sight made Calder's blood run cold. "Alara," he whispered, his voice shaking, "what have you done?" She turned toward him, her eyes wide with both terror and hope. "It wasn't me," she breathed. "He's waking up." For a long, breathless moment, Calder could only stare at the coffin. The moonlight cast a pale glow across the disturbed earth, and the lid was undeniably shifted, as though something had pushed from within. His rational mind rebelled against the thought, but his instinct screamed that something unnatural was unfolding before his eyes. "Alara," he said firmly, trying to steady his voice, "listen to me. Graves do not open themselves. If the coffin has moved, there must be another explanation. Grave robbers, shifting soil." But before he could finish, a sound pierced the silence. It was faint, muffled, yet unmistakable, a hollow thud from inside the coffin. Calder felt the blood drain from his face. Alara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "He's trying to reach me." Calder's instincts told him to flee, but his curiosity rooted him to the ground. Against all reason, he stepped closer, pressing his ear to the coffin's lid. At first, nothing, only the pounding of his own heartbeat. Then again, the sound, a scraping, desperate and weak, as though nails dragged against wood. "Alara," he hissed, pulling back sharply. "This is impossible." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "No, it's Adrian. I told you, he promised me." Her trembling fingers reached for the coffin's edge, as though she might lift it herself. Calder grabbed her wrist. "Wait, you don't know what's inside. If this is Adrian, then how? He was buried for years. No man could survive that long." Alara's voice quivered, yet her determination burned. If anyone could, it was him. Adrian knew things no one else did. He studied herbs, strange medicines. He told me once that death was only a veil, and that one day he'd prove it. Calder's thoughts raced. The accounts he had gathered about Adrian, the herbs, the powders, the experiments, they suddenly aligned with terrifying clarity. Was it possible Adrian had discovered a way to suspend life, to slow the body until it seemed dead? But if so, how could he awaken now, after so much time? "Alara, listen to me," Calder urged, his voice low but urgent. "If Adrian is truly alive, then what he's done defies nature. We must be careful." Before he could finish, the coffin rattled violently, the lid shifting further. Both of them stumbled back in shock. Alara cried out, torn between terror and joy. Calder's pulse thundered in his ears. This was no illusion. Someone was inside. "Help me open it," Alara begged, clutching Calder's arm. "Please. He needs me." Calder hesitated. Every instinct warned him of danger, yet the pleading in her eyes was unbearable. Slowly, cautiously, he placed his hands on the coffin's edge. Together, they pushed. The wood creaked, the hinges groaned, and the lid began to rise. The stench hit them first, a wave of decay, damp and foul, that made Calder gag. He nearly dropped the lid, but Alara pressed on, ignoring the smell. Inside lay the figure of a man, gaunt, pale, yet shockingly preserved, as though time itself had touched him lightly. His chest rose in the faintest whisper of breath. "Alara," Calder murmured, unable to believe it. "He's breathing." Alara sobbed with joy, falling to her knees beside the coffin. "Adrian," she whispered, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "You came back, just as you promised." But Calder's relief quickly turned to dread. The man's eyes fluttered open, and in that instant, Calder saw not love, but something far darker. Adrian's gaze was hollow, unfocused, like a man clawing his way out of nightmare. His lips parted, releasing a rasping breath that chilled Calder to the bone. "Alara," the voice croaked, fragile but unmistakable. Her heart leapt. She leaned closer, cradling his head. "I'm here. I never left you." But Calder stepped back, unease gnawing at him. There was something unnatural in Adrian's expression, something not entirely human. His fingers twitched with jerky, uneven movements, and the air around him seemed colder, heavier. "Alara," Calder said urgently, "we must be cautious. This may not be the man you remember." She shot him a fierce look. "Don't you dare. This is Adrian. My Adrian." But as Adrian's eyes locked onto Calder, a flicker of something violent sparked in their depths, a hunger, raw and primal. Calder's stomach turned. Whatever had returned from that coffin was not simply a man who cheated death. It was something else entirely. Calder's breath caught as Adrian's hollow gaze fixed on him. There was no warmth, no recognition, only an unsettling hunger burning beneath the man's sunken eyes. The once great traveler, the man Alara had adored, now looked more like a shadow stitched together from death itself. "Alara," Adrian rasped again, his hand rising shakily. She grasped it without hesitation, tears streaming down her face. I told you I'd come back. You see, love never dies. Calder's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her joy, but every instinct screamed danger. Adrian's grip on her hand tightened, far too strong for someone so weak. Alara winced, but she refused to let go. You're hurting me, she whispered softly, yet still smiled. It doesn't matter. You're here. That's all that matters. Adrian's head turned toward Calder, his lips curling into a faint, unnatural smile. She waited while the world forgot me. You, doctor, you don't understand. Calder forced himself to speak, though fear threatened to choke him. Adrian, whatever you've done, it's not natural. You should not be alive. The body cannot endure years beneath the earth. Adrian's eyes darkened. Death is a prison built by the weak. But I broke free. I endured because of her and because of what I discovered. His voice grew sharper, stronger with each word, as though some dark strength flowed back into him. They laughed at me, called me mad, but now I will show them all that death is nothing. Alara shook her head gently. No, Adrian, you don't need to prove anything. You're here with me. That's enough. For a moment, Adrian's expression softened, but then his body convulsed violently, his fingers clawing the air. Calder stepped forward, heart pounding. Alara, step away. This isn't the man you loved. It's something else. He's not whole. But Alara clung tighter, sobbing. Don't take him from me again. The coffin shook under Adrian's jerking movements. His eyes rolled back, then snapped open, glowing faintly with an unnatural light. Calder knew then what Alara refused to see. Adrian had not conquered death. He had become trapped between worlds, a fragment of life clinging desperately to what remained. Alara, Calder pleaded, if you love him, let him rest. This existence is torment. Her sobs quieted. She looked at Adrian, truly looked, and saw the torment twisting his once gentle face. Her heart broke anew. Slowly, trembling, she loosened her grip. I love you, she whispered, kissing his forehead. But you're not meant to stay. Adrian's body shuddered one last time. His gaze lingered on her, filled with longing and sorrow, before his chest stilled and his eyes closed. The unnatural chill lifted, and silence returned to the graveyard. Alara collapsed against the coffin, weeping. Calder placed a hand on her shoulder, his own chest heavy. You gave him what he needed most, he said softly. Peace. In the days that followed, the village whispered endlessly about what had happened, though none knew the truth as Alara and Calder did. For Alara, grief remained, but so did a quiet strength. She had loved beyond measure, and at last, she had let go. And for Calder, the experience left a question that haunted him long after. Had Adrian truly cheated death, or had love itself been strong enough to call him back, even for a fleeting moment?